Hey, this is Jack, and this video is called Joe Rogan versus mainstream media. This is a reaction video. It's from a YouTube short by Russell Brand, the British comedian turned sort of social commentator YouTuber. And it's about Joe Rogan, the incredibly popular podcast host. I'm sure many of you have heard of Joe Rogan. So I've not seen it before. Let's watch it together. I know Russell Brand's work fairly well. I don't follow everything that he does, but I've sort of tracked his journey with interest from, Hollywood star guy to sort of vegan meditator. And he has some specific views on where we're at socially and politically. I'm interested in those. I don't share them all. So let's see where we go with this one. I'm going to minimize myself here, and then we will bring up Mr. Russell Brand.
Joe Rogan irresponsibly has a success.
I just say off the bat, there's something. Russell Brand he's often doing a bit of shouty, isn't he? Joe Rogan has got an irresponsible. I love it. I love it, and I appreciate, because he's a comedian, he can just drop in sentences like this. Joe Rogan irresponsibly has a successful podcast. Shame on him.
Podcast. Therefore, 270 doctors are condemning him having conversations on that podcast.
Oh.
So they're not really doctors. Some of them are vets, and others just people. If you're Chris.
Okay, so this is, if I remember correctly, this is a kind of a COVID backdrop, and this was a group of 270 people who spoke out about who Joe Rogan was having on his podcast, who he was amplifying, particularly people who perhaps were anti-vax or vaccine questioning, or were perhaps using these methods that, such as ivermectin, which the CDC wasn't condoning. So I don't know all the details of this. It's okay that these people aren't all doctors. Quite a lot of them were like PhD scientists or tenured academics. They were mostly people that would have a professional opinion and expertise on this matter, right? It was kind of obvious why they were contributing, because either they were, disease specialists, or they had, a science PhD, or they were a nurse, but who's dealt with people on the front line. So I don't think it's completely fair that when he just says some of them were just people, I don't think they were just pulling people off the streets. They were actually people that, I think legitimately have a professional angle on this.
Criticizing someone for their credibility. At least your own open letter should be co-signed by actual doctors. The whole topic and thrust of the epistle was legitimacy and credibility.
One of the things you've got to love about Russell Brand is he drops in words. I mean, I'm known for this, right? I'm known for dropping in a few words sometimes, but he uses a lot of words I'd never use, and I kind of appreciate it. It's a little crazy, but it's a little neat. He's Shakespearean in some ways.
Can't get any doctors. No, don't matter. Get anyone to sign it. Are we criticizing Joe Rogan because we think that he's not credible? Yeah, don't matter. It shows you what the actual objective is. The actual objective is we want to be in charge again. Like CNN, these companies used to be regarded with some respect. You're CNN, this is the news. Negative.
So let me just come back in front and center here. So, I mean, he's pointing to something that is happening, right? There is a breakdown of trust levels around mainstream media. I don't always see that as problematic or as sinister. Meaning, I don't think what got us there is going to get us here. How do you say that? Basically, with the internet, with the proliferation of content creation, with the deconstruction that happens with postmodernism, and I think we are squarely in a postmodern age, or at least a heavily partial postmodern age, the way that we consume information, what we look to, who we look to, and how we trust is going to change. So I think that's okay. So I think he's pointing to an underlying point that is happening. I think people are quick to criticize Joe Rogan at times. They should also be appreciating that he's willing to talk to people from a diversity of perspectives. And I think there's something laudable about that. And I think he generally does a good job of being non-judgmental and staying curious and actually being a good interviewer. I do get that during times of acute global crisis, it may be that it's okay to suggest that certain perspectives aren't given the same amount of platform, kind of in service of keeping people more narrowly oriented to what is most going to help. That, I think, is the generous way of thinking about why CNN take issue with Joe Rogan talking to people who are outside of the mainstream scientific consensus. I think it's good to talk to people outside of consensuses, and I also think it's legitimate their perspective of why that could be dangerous. So I think that Russell Brand is being unfair when he says that it's just about we want to be in charge. I'm not sure that most people go into journalism with the perspective of I want to be in charge. I think if you want to be in charge, you may go and run for office or become a CEO, or be born into the right family. So this is sometimes a critique that I hear from the right of the left. Russell Brand, Russell Brand, for those of you that know, historically was more left-leaning, but has found quite a lot of traction with people on the right, even though he himself doesn't share a lot of views for the political right. He does share a distrust in traditional forms of political authority and a sort of a distrust of the media and the intelligentsia. And some of that, I think, having a healthy skepticism about that, I think is pretty much a good thing. The danger is that it very easily gets into this ascribing motives. Like, I know why you're doing this. The reason you're doing this is because you want to be in charge. I don't know what lets him know that, right? That may be his suspicion. It may be his intuition, but I don't know that we can just easily know what someone else's motivation is, right? It might be better to kind of challenge them or ask them about that. And I think it's easy for people on the right to look at people on the left and say it's all about power, when actually sometimes on the left, what people are fighting for is their version of what they think is better, right? Which could be, a tougher regulatory environment, or it could be, protecting someone's rights, or it could be creating fairness through using the state. And what I like about the right-wing perspective is that it's sensitive to power grabs by the left. And I think it's good to be sensitive to those things, and it's good to be sensitive to infringements on individual rights. What I don't like is this sort of uniform, I know what you're doing. I think it's a form of subjectification. I think it's like, well, if I were doing that, the only reason I'd be doing that would be as a power grab. And I think we can be more generous and more sophisticated, whilst when it is happening, also calling out if there's a power grab, or let's just acknowledge that this was supposed to be a temporary power and now it's becoming more permanent. So that's what I sense. I appreciate Russell Brand's sort of demeanor, his kind of jokes and his jolliness. And I've definitely listened to some Joe Rogan podcasts, and I like the range, that Joe Rogan kind of moves across sort of business and politics and sports. And I don't think the only reason to criticize him is because you're losing numbers to him, although I'm sure that CNN is noticing that. That's what I think. What do you think? Leave me a comment. Let me know what's your experience. If you have a video that you'd like me to react to, please link that as well. And as always, I'm Jack. Thanks for being here.